Hi everyone, I'm meteorologist Valerie Mills. Thanks for logging on to My Fox Hurricane. It has been a busy couple of days here around the Sunshine State. We're still talking about Helene bringing impacts just north of us, but I want to start by looking back at the 2024 season and the tracks that we have seen so far. It has really been active here around the Gulf of Mexico with 4 storms making landfall here across Gulf states. Of course, we started out the season with Beryl, which really set records all across the area. That made landfall right in the Houston area, then tracked inland with a lot of inland impacts as well. But then we had Helene and Debby. Those two both making landfall in Florida's Big Bend. And just as we zoom in closer here, look at how close these 2 storms were when they made landfall. Debby was a tropical storm as it passed off our coastline here around the Tampa Bay area. That one was a really efficient rainmaker. That's where we saw record rain in Sarasota. Even in the Tampa area, we saw about 6 to 12 inches of rain, and that was a tropical storm well off our coast. That made landfall then as a Category 1 hurricane. Then we flip over to Helene. Those made landfall about 40 miles apart from each other, but Helene about double the size. Helene really will be remembered for just how large of a storm that was. We're talking a wind field that is one of the largest that we've ever seen as far as historical hurricanes. You think about the tropical storm force winds, and those were extending out about 350 miles from the storm's center of circulation. That is why we saw impacts really all across the Sunshine State when this storm was passing just to the west of us. I mean, we had tropical storm watches and advisories that extended off the east coast of the state. Most of our hurricane advisories, though, those were focused in right around the Big Bend region. This storm that made landfall as a powerful Category 4 hurricane right outside the Perry, Florida area, packing a punch, 140-mile-per-hour winds at landfall. And of course, Helene will be remembered for the storm surge. Absolutely catastrophic, especially right along our immediate area. We saw record-setting storm surge from Sarasota up into Tampa Bay and, of course, Cedar Key. That was one of the spots that we knew was going to get absolutely catastrophic storm surge. And sure enough, it's sites like this that we are seeing all across our Bay Area. Widespread storm surge impacting communities, flooding out homes with several feet of water. And we're still continuing to learn more about the damage that we've seen here across the area. Look at some of the storm totals from Helene. Cedar Key, over a 10-foot storm surge, peak wind gusts there, hurricane force up to about 84 miles per hour. And St. Pete also saw hurricane force winds, peak gusts there 82 miles per hour. And just look at these storm surge values. East Bay, a little over 7 feet of storm surge. Clearwater, 6.7 feet. Around St. Pete, close to 6.5 feet of storm surge. So really all across the area, this set new records for what we've ever seen as far as storm surge. We think back to Idalia, where that brought a lot of storm surge here to our Tampa Bay area spots. And in some cases, we saw double the storm surge from Helene. And with that, winds were pretty strong all across the area, anywhere from about 60-mile-per-hour gusts at the Tampa International Airport. 68 miles per hour is our peak gust there, 75 for Clearwater Beach, and then up into Cedar Key and beyond. That's where we were seeing those very damaging wind gusts. And, you know, it wasn't just here around Tampa Bay, but once that storm made landfall, this was the view in Atlanta. This storm has continued to cause tons of problems. Atlanta, parts of Georgia, through the Carolinas, and the Tennessee Valley, over a foot of rain has fallen over the last 2 days. And really, this storm continuing to cause problems well after its Florida landfall. Look at these rain totals over the last 3 days. A little over a foot right where it made landfall in parts of the Panhandle. And then we were talking 10 inches of rain right around the Atlanta metro area. Columbia, South Carolina, nearly 15 inches of rain there, pretty close to that as we get up into the higher terrain areas. And we're even talking about parts of the Appalachians dealing with the threat for mudslides and catastrophic flooding as well. You could just really see where this storm's path went. So really for us, it didn't cause a whole lot of rain, actually. It was the storm surge along a lot of our Florida coastline. But then the heavy rain has been that big problem as it's continued to weaken after landfall. There's where Helene is now. Parts of Kentucky into Ohio, Indiana, even Illinois seeing some of the outer rain bands from Helene. It's continued to weaken quite a bit, but you could still see the rotation of that area and a lot of rain still continuing for these spots. So Saturday into Sunday, we're still going to be talking about now post-tropical Helene. But look at how slow it's moving. The steering flow that kind of guided this storm north up into parts of Georgia, that steering flow kind of collapsed. And when that happens, a storm doesn't exactly know where to go. And that's kind of exactly what we've seen with Helene. It curved back to the west. And now as I play out this track map, look what it does. Little loop-de-loop action. It heads back to the east, but not a lot of forward motion expected. It's only moving 3 miles per hour, but at least winds down quite a bit. Now only 25-mile-per-hour peak winds with that storm. So it's not so much the wind that's going to be an issue, but more of this additional rain, especially for parts of the Ohio Valley. That's where we're going to be talking about this, just kind of continuing to spin through the day on Saturday. Then as we play this out into Sunday, it really loses its structure. Still some lingering rain possible as we look ahead into Monday morning. Parts of the Northeast, then through Washington, maybe seeing some of that lingering rain. But we're really going to be done talking about Helene finally by the end of the weekend. But still, look at how many states are outlined in the excessive rain outlook for today. From Tennessee up into the parts of the Midwest and the Ohio Valley, that's where we're going to focus for the potential for some additional rain and the potential for more of these flooding concerns. As for the rest of the tropics, yes, we are tracking some additional areas for development. Want to start by focusing on this one, because this is the area that's at this point closest to home that we're going to be watching over the next few days very closely. Only a 40% chance for this to develop in the next 7 days, but conditions rather favorable for additional strengthening. So we could see an area of low pressure form in the western Caribbean as it generally kind of moves northwest, then emerges into the Gulf of Mexico. So that's something that we'll be keeping a close eye on because water's very warm around the Yucatan Channel. We've got the loop current right here. So this is something that is going to be on the top of our minds here in the next few days moving forward. Otherwise, we've got a couple of other areas that we're watching. One, a wave that's kind of right in the main development region. That one, a 10% chance to develop over the next 2 days, 50% chance over the next week or so. But notice, we also have Tropical Storm Joyce and Hurricane Isaac. Some good news with those storms. Those are not going to be making an impact to land here. So as we take a closer look, Tropical Storm Joyce, we've got winds up to 50 miles per hour. This one moving northwest at about 10 miles per hour, but don't really expect this to strengthen a whole lot. And as we play out the track map here through Wednesday, this is really going to run into some unfavorable conditions. So this likely weakens. Going to be a fish storm, which is a name that we refer to when storms don't make any impact to land. They just stay out in the open water. Best case scenario is certainly to have some fish storms out in the Atlantic. Then we turn over to Hurricane Isaac. This one has strengthened just a little bit. You can see the track it's been taking primarily due east. Now, Category 2 hurricane, 105-mile-per-hour winds. This one continuing to move to the northeast at about 20 miles per hour. So this one going to continue to maintain strength as a hurricane, likely through about Sunday afternoon into Monday. Then it moves into some cooler waters and some rapid weakening expected as it kind of curves more off to the north. So again, this one not going to be impacting the continental U.S. So that is some good news there. But those two names now ticked off the hurricane list. The next name in line, that would be Kirk. And so if we see either of those two waves that we just talked about, the one in the western Caribbean the one out in the open Atlantic. If those were able to become a tropical storm, that would be once we get those winds up to 40 miles per hour, that would take on the name Kirk. And really, it's important to remember it's been a busy season given all of the storms that we have seen. Almost all of them have had some sort of impact to land, especially those 4 Gulf storms that I showed you just a couple of minutes ago. But we still have all of September and October to get through before we're kind of done with this hurricane season. So it's important to remember still October is a busy month for us. We typically see about 17% of our named storms. And even in October, November rather, we can still see some storms spark up even though waters start to trend downward. Activity trends downward in November. About 5% of named storms occur that month. So not time to let our guards down yet. We're going to continue to watch all of those areas. And of course, we'll update you should any of those strengthen, and all of the updates can be found right here on My Fox Hurricane.